Oh, Lord help me. We got a race car. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to RC Every Day. This has been a battle. This is, I don't even know, 4 or 5 hours in to this video, and this thing is fighting me with the motor mounts. The motor mounts went easy. I used the actual pieces of Delrin that we had tried to use for the servo mounts, and we opted for the uncut ones. And you see some existing holes on this SSD scale motor. Time's running out. I don't have time to get any more printed stuff. The last one I got was not scaled right. So, yeah, we're going to use this engine. We're going to make it work. We're going to have us a nice little small block. And I'm going to paint it. I was planning on doing that in this video. I was going to paint and weather the engine, get it all, get a motor in it, get it geared, get it put in for the last time. But transmission mount has been fighting me for the better part of 2 or 3 hours. So I'm happy with the placement. I would have liked it set a little further back to the firewall, but that's just how it's going to be. I was using existing holes in the frame, and I didn't want to tear this car back down to separate chassis rails and try to drill new holes, and they would have been close to where the other ones were. It worked out. Remember, the SSD transmission is pretty wide, and this body has a trans tunnel and a floor, and I've already messed some of that up, made a hole in the floor accidentally trying to sort out this transmission mount, but everything is on there. The body mounts all line up. The grill is still tilted a little further forward than it needs to be because I'm not putting it in there. That mount is pretty precarious, so we're not going to do that until this thing is buttoned up and ready to go. Like I said, we're threading the fine line here between RC car and scale model, and it's a dangerous game because the more detailed you get, the less you really want to drive it. So it will run and drive when we get there, and that's what rule number one with these builds I do. They have to function. But yeah, after USTE, this one may be just a backdrop piece. We'll see. We'll have to get it out and do TikToks and stuff with, and reels on Instagram. But yeah, I'm planning on doing the whole motor, transmission, getting it all patinaed and installed, doing the headers, everything in this video, but time just not on our side. So let me show you what we got going on here. So I spent probably better part of an hour this afternoon going through all my parts bins, trying to find something to mount this transmission. This transmission, if you're familiar with the SSD ones, it has a transfer case that bolts to it. And it's not made to do this, be a two-wheel drive. So I took the transfer case off. The shaft was a mile long. Yeah, figured we could do something with that. It already had a hole kind of round about where it needed to be. So I did drill that out and file down this edge. It has quite a bit of slop in this shaft. I mean, that's every bit of 5 millimeter, but I couldn't find a way to space it inside to where the shaft would stay put. It's just a bad design. I mean, it's not designed for what we're using. So it's a bad design for what we're trying to do with it. Not fault an SSD for it because it's not intended for this purpose. But it'll work. I don't have a drive shaft short enough, unfortunately. Time's a ticking to USTE, so I do have to come back. Another thing I was trying to do in this video was I got to adjust the pinion angle. I got to pull this cross member out because our drive shaft is going to be pretty much right through there. And we're just going to lengthen these bottom rods, but I'm not doing it tonight because I am whooped. So I made a piece of aluminum, or I found a piece of aluminum, cut it out, so it went around the transmission. The only place to mount is this direction. That's what's nice about the RC 4-wheel drive R4. It has some mounting holes downward, so you can just go straight across, figure out how to trim it out and make it fit. I didn't want to take the chassis apart to try to drill new holes. We've got enough holes in it. So I use the rear lower or upper longer suspension arm mounts, and yeah, worked out pretty well. So I was trying to make a nice little sheet metal bracket. First one I did, the holes ripped out when I was trying to notch it for the actual output shaft. And yeah, so I had to make another one. That's the fourth iteration of this this piece. I made one that was real nice there, number 3, and it came up too high. So I thought I'll throw spacers underneath these bolts and it'll just set up a little high. No harm, no foul. It'll be easier to take on and off, having some room to work with. And then it wouldn't clear the body. So I did try to notch the body, and I wallowed out my tunnel a little bit and made a hole. So now we got some rust holes on the driver's side. A little bit of accuracy we'll have to weather in later. But that wasn't going to work. I cut it down and fixed it here at the end. And there's absolutely no way to get it back on top, because that was kind of my thought. It would hang on here. I'm not taking this all apart again tonight, so I bolted it from the bottom. And it works out just as fine. The pinion angle is still going to be off. So what's another 2 millimeter of lower? And it puts our motor pretty horizontal to the front frame rails where they bump up. So the car rakes forward, but the engine's level. And that's kind of the look. I mean, you see that with a lot of hot rods. Your motor always angles down a little bit. I don't know if it's just for oil flow or things like that, but rear sump oil pan on here, so it makes sense. We're going to roll with it. So yeah, not a whole lot else to say about today's progress. It's progress nonetheless. It's a lot of work. I don't have nuts on the bottom of these because this all has to come out. You see, we only got 3 screws holding the motor to the transmission. We don't have a motor in there. I've got to find a can motor. probably use one of my Tamiya torque tuned motors in this one. See if it gets us a little bit more get up and go. But I'm digging it. Still, I'm mad at it right now, but I'm not disappointed with the progress we made. Motor, I love the fin valve covers on this. I would like something a little more elaborate, something a little more wild, vintage style engine, but this is all we got right now. We might come back later and explore some other 3D options, but as of right now, I think I'm going to weather the transmission. It's already gotten dirty. It's plastic. This is the first time I've dealt with a plastic scale transmission. Just from dealing with the grease and stuff, it's got smudges all over it, and I think we're just going to give that a pretty heavy dirt wash and roll with it. The motor is not going to be orange. I can't stand Chevy orange on something like this. We're probably just going to do it dark color of some kind, and that will at least show up the weathering. We're going to weather it out, intake, valve cover, everything. So really, we're pretty close on this thing. Next step will be driveline, angle, rear or pinion angle, motor, weathering and painting the motor, electric motor in there. And then we've got to figure out the electrical. And then it's on to the interior, hide the battery, detailed interior, and we should be ready for USTE. So fingers crossed. But I appreciate everybody watching. And yeah, get out there and do something. Keep it scale, and I'll see you in the next video.